today is how do we actually get this shit done? Today, we're going to look at how do you craft your scale strategy and break this bigger goal that we've talked about in previous weeks or previous days into some bite-sized chunks so that you can actually get things done. This is day 3 in my series that I'm going to be doing here for 30 days on how to double your business. If you don't know who I am, my name is Peter. I am a media buyer turned marketing consultant. I've scaled digital marketing campaigns and digital marketing teams in a bunch of different niches and managed about 500 million in ad spend in my career. I'm based now here in Brazil, Rio de Janeiro. So if you're in the area, let me know. And if you have questions, let me know in the comments or reach out to me on social media. Today, we're going to talk about why does this matter? Why do you need to have a strategy for execution? Most businesses don't fail from bad ideas. One of the reasons why they fail is from a lack of focus and a lack of rhythm on achieving these ideas or accomplishing these ideas that they want to execute on. Strategy is going to be this bridge between that long-term vision that you have and the actions that are going to drive it this week. If you want to scale to 9 figures, you need both of these: a clear destination, that big idea we talked about on Monday, the big idea that gets you up out of bed, the ambitious goal that motivates everyone, right? No one wants to work on a low-performing team. No one wants to work on a team that's just wasting time and going nowhere. Everyone wants to feel rewarded and accomplished in their work. And so you got to put a big destination there. Doubling your business, one of those destinations, but tailor it to you, tailor it to your organization. And then the second thing everyone needs is a repeatable cycle to get this stuff done. We'll call it sprints here, but a cycle for achieving these goals that you have. You need to have this dual planning framework, or you need to have both of these in mind as you navigate execution, right? Your long-term vision, your North Star, where are you going, right? This could be doubling your revenue. This could be becoming the #1 brand in your space. It could be a bunch of different things. And then you need to break it down. Today, I'm going to recommend 90-day sprints, but you can tinker with this a little bit. You need to have it long enough that you can get stuff done. Some bottlenecks cannot be removed in 30 days. Some bottlenecks require your sales organization to use a new technology, and that technology takes longer than 30 days to be implemented, but it could be implemented in 90 days, which is why we'll use 90 days here today. But you can tinker with this a little bit. 60 days acceptable, but just make sure that you have enough time to remove a bottleneck and then, brainstorm and plan a solution to a bottleneck, remove that bottleneck, and then reflect and process. What do we do, right? In my mind, 90 days is the time frame it takes to do that. Take a week, think about how could we solve this problem. Don't commit to anything yet. Develop a plan, execute on that plan, finish that plan by 60 days or 30 days if you can, and then reflect a little bit. What's the new biggest bottleneck we need to remove? Process it a little bit before you jump into the next one. Why does 90-day work? It's long enough to make progress towards that goal, but short enough that you can be agile with it. Create accountability and urgency, gives you a predictable rhythm, a plan, brainstorm in that first week, execute, review, reset. When you're planning, do brainstorming. Write a list of 100 ways you could solve this problem. 90 of them will suck, but maybe you have 10 really good ones, and maybe one of those ideas are one that you never thought about. Maybe one of those ideas is that 10x idea that you would never have considered otherwise. Plan it thoroughly. Make your plan. Remember, it's a gamble. It's a bet. One of the books that I would recommend reading is Thinking in Bets. make an educated bet. Make your best bet, make your best gamble, but know that you're making a gamble and you got to stick with it a little bit. You cannot pull the plug day one if things are not going the way you want. It's an experiment. I talked about this yesterday or 2 days ago. Your business is a funnel to be optimized. It's an A/B test. Each one of these sprints is an A/B test that you're putting in your business to see if you can drive increased team efficiency and team output in a way that moves you towards your goal. Execute on it. This is the core of the sprint. Execute and then reflect and review, right? This again is those times where you got to unplug a little bit, walk away from your computer, go for a walk, sit with a cup of coffee, think about it a little bit. And then you'll be ready to move into your next sprint, having reflected what's your new biggest problem, moving into the next step. When you're in this planning phase, find your top 3 priorities. What are the top 3 things? No department, if you're trying to scale to 100 million, no department should have more than 1. But at a high level, the company level, you could have 3. I'd put an example here of a growth priority, which is maybe launching a new ads channel or maybe improving your conversion rate. An operations priority. This could be like even if your e-commerce store adding a SKU, adding a bundle, and then a leadership priority. Maybe you implement entrepreneurial operating system, which comes out of one of the books that I would recommend. Actually, the book I would recommend. If you have not read, let me jump ahead a little bit. If you have not read this 4 Disciplines of Execution, go read it tonight. That should be, step 1 if you have not read it yet. For me, that's like the most important part out of this. And then think about making sure you have the right number of priorities. If everything's a priority, then nothing is a priority. If you think, oh, my team can do 10 priorities this week, you're the bottleneck in your organization. Right? If you as the leader are putting too many urgent priorities on there, nothing's urgent, nothing's a priority. And you really have to think about that. We'll talk more about identifying bottlenecks tomorrow because that inspires what do you pull out as your priorities. Your priorities should be your bottlenecks. Your biggest bottleneck should be the priority that you're trying to solve here. But if you as the leader are doing that, if you're putting a bunch of priorities every week, if you're changing that priority next week, you're the bottleneck. That's the bottleneck. How do you build a strategy? So think about the vision. I pulled the quote on day 1. What you get by achieving your goals is not nearly as important as who you become by Henry David Thoreau. This company, what's the number? 100 million, 10 million? What is a company in your space doing 100K or 100 million look like? What are they doing? What people do they have on the team? Where are they advertising? What does their traffic look like each month? What processes do they have? What project management software do they use? Think about what that 100K company in your space looks like. And if you don't know, ask some questions. Get a picture. If there is a 100K brand in your space, maybe snoop on LinkedIn a little bit. What roles do they have? What people do they have working there? Get some intel on it. Then break it down into your goals. What gets us closer to this target? You can play with that percentage, right? If you're a smaller brand and you want 100% improvement, think about that. What can we do to get 100% closer to this goal this year? And then break it down into your quarterly sprints. What are the 3 biggest bottlenecks preventing us from getting there? And then make 3 priorities based off of those bottlenecks. Your 3 priorities should be like solutions to that problem. And then each week, think about what can we do to move this priority forward. We have these 3 priorities. Let's say you're an e-com store. And maybe one of those priorities is site conversion rate. Maybe what you can be doing there to improve your site conversion rate is copy testing, right? So maybe you're doing a copy test each week and looking at the conversion rate off of that. Your daily data that I would be taking is one or two numbers, right? So in this example, site conversion rate with page tests, what was our conversion rate yesterday? What can we do today to drive a better conversion rate? You, as the founder, have to push this. Nobody else is going to push it. Your operations manager, your team leads, no one else is going to force this. You have to push it. So every day, ask that question. How did yesterday look? What are we doing today? You need to keep things focused on just a few bigger bets. Pick out the three. If you're a small team, pick out one. Pick out one bet that you're going to go all in on the whole team to get that done. If you're a bigger organization with a bunch of departments, which if you're moving to 100 million, you probably are with a bunch of different teams doing different things. You can have each team focused on one thing. You can have yourself a leadership priority that only your leadership team is focused on. Measure success. So each priority needs to have a person who's accountable. Every day, that person is speaking to it. If that person is sick or if that person is at the dentist, have a proxy, speak for it. This is how we did yesterday. This is what we're doing today. Have a finish line, and on your dashboards that we looked at yesterday, have it color coded. Red is off track, yellow is at risk, green is we're crushing it, we're on track, we're there, right? Speak to it every day. This is how we're doing. This is how we did yesterday. This is what we're doing today. This is how, when you get on a weekly call, a weekly team call, this is how last week looked. Good or bad. Good and bad days will happen. Good and bad weeks will happen. But what's the overall trajectory there? We want a trend towards goal. Integrate this long-term vision. I will talk about this repeatedly because it needs to be your 90-day sprint is your execution engine, right? This is how you're going to get shit done. But what are you getting done? It has to be aligned with that high level direction. Your big goal is the compass. It's the direction you're going in. And then these sprints are the stuff you're executing to get it done. An example would be an e-commerce brand in the wellness space. Maybe your goal for the year is an omni-channel funnel. Maybe your goal for the sprint is launching YouTube ads and retention funnel. And then each week, what you're talking about is, okay, what creative are we producing? And the last batch, how did it do? We launched creative last week. Was it, what metrics do we want to look at on it? Maybe we want to look at CPM. Maybe we want to look at click-through rate. Maybe we will want to look at conversion rate off of that traffic. If you have a short conversion window, you probably can look at conversion rate. If you have a long conversion window, you probably can't. But look at CPM, CTR. Was it better or worse than our old creative? Okay, better. Let's do more like that. If it was worse, do something else. If you are a larger team, you got to plan those pivots in advance. I'm making this batch right now. If it works, I'm going to do this. If it doesn't work, I'm going to do that. And have those wheels spinning already. You, as the leader, need to shift from doer to architect. You need to stop thinking every morning, what do I need to do? And start thinking, what systems need to exist to get this done? I told you a lot. I'll tell you again, your business is a funnel that needs to be optimized. Just like an e-commerce website, your organization is a funnel that needs to be optimized. Think of it as a conveyor belt line in a factory. Your prospects are moving from department to department to department. How do you optimize that process to make it more efficient and to make it more effective? The 9-figure founders are thinking in systems, people, rhythms, not individual tasks. And each time you do this, if you're trying to scale to 100 million, each time you do this, think about one process that you can take yourself out of, right? Each sprint, build a system, build a process that you can have a process running without your involvement. What are the common mistakes? Setting too many goals. I told this to you before because it is by far one of the biggest mistakes and bottlenecks that I see. It's these founders who want to do 100 priorities this week with 3 people working on their team. And then next Monday, they forgot about the priorities from last week and there's a new list of 100. If that sounds familiar to you, even if you reflect and it sounds familiar to you, you're the bottleneck, unequivocally. There's no way getting around that, right? You got to focus. If you're not focused, your team's not going to be focused or it's going to be chaos. You've got to have someone who takes ownership of each one of these. Each priority needs an owner. There needs to be a person who speaks to it, not a team, not a department, a person. Another mistake is not having the numbers for it. We talked about e-com store launching YouTube. How did it do? If you're going off of vibes, you're not going to move forward, right? What do the numbers say? How did it stack up? You have to be talking about those numbers. The daily numbers, talk about them every day, but also each week. How did the week as a whole do? And don't go so quickly that you cannot properly reflect about it. You want enough time after you start the victory lap to think clearly about the current state of affairs. I would go back to all these questions that I asked day one. These questions. How's your business doing? How are you doing? What responsibility do you play? At the end of this cycle, I would go back to all of those questions and think about them again with the new reality, the new company that you've created, right? And when you do this well, you have a different company at the end than the company you had at the start. In this new company, what role do you play? Think clearly about it. Think clearly about what bottlenecks there are. A missing piece from what I'm going to talk to you about today is what I'm going to talk to you about tomorrow, and that's identifying those bottlenecks. Because really, all of these priorities that you pick out should be solutions to bottlenecks. When you do this, you're removing bottlenecks each time. Don't try to go and maximize what's really working. Look at really what are the biggest bottlenecks and solve those biggest bottlenecks every time you go through the cycle. Put it all together. Your vision gives you the direction, but your sprints create the momentum or the traction. If you're a smaller brand and you're trying to get to 10 million, this is imperative for finding that traction. I told you a couple of days ago to chase the traction. You're not going to have any traction if you're not getting anything done. And so this is going to give you that space to find where you're getting some traction and double down on it. That overall goal gives you the why. These sprints are going to tell you how to get it done. And at the end of every sprint, reflect. I told you at the beginning of every sprint to brainstorm. Ray Dalio, in his book, Principles, that's on the bookshelf over here, says that the quality of your life is determined by the quality of your decisions. The quality of your decisions, my speculation, is your ideas and your thoughts, right? How are you going to do something that you haven't had the idea or the thought to do it? So brainstorm a lot, consume a lot of information, read. Where do your ideas come? Read a book, go for a walk, clear your mind a little bit. Consume good content, good information, and consume it from a variety of sources, right? If you're trying to improve site conversion rate on an e-com store, don't go look at your direct competitors. Think about who's the best at e-com conversion. There's one name in my head for that. I would go look at Amazon. What is Amazon doing on their product pages? If you notice, they're quite simple. Perhaps that's the point. Here are my resources today. I talked about it already. If you haven't read 4 Disciplines of Execution, go read it yesterday. Like literally get the audiobook and listen to it tonight. Read that book first. There's a lot of good books on here. There's some good videos on here. Thinking in Bets is my number two, because all of this is a gamble. Everything we do in life is a gamble, right? That's a really good book to help you identify what are these biggest gambles you're going to pick off within these sprints. Okay. Tomorrow, we're going to be talking about how to identify these bottlenecks so that you can properly set priorities to solve them. So come back tomorrow if that's interesting to you, and let me know in the comments or on social media. I showed you my social media handles. I have them linked in the slide deck that's linked wherever you're watching this video. Let me know. Shoot me a question if you have a question. Okay, I'll talk to you tomorrow.